Two people, same job title, same salary, same city, same rent, same grocery store. One of them retires with a house paid off and a comfortable cushion in the bank. The other is still juggling credit card minimums at 60. Same paycheck, completely different life. How is that possible? You've probably wondered this about someone you know. Maybe a coworker who makes exactly what you make, but somehow always seems ahead or behind. It feels like it should come down to income. More money in, more money saved, right? But that's not actually how it works. And once you see why, you'll never look at your own paycheck the same way again. Let's start with the obvious answer, the one most people land on first. Maybe one person is just better with money, smarter, more disciplined, more responsible. It's a comforting story because it puts the outcome entirely in someone's hands. But researchers who study financial behavior have found something more interesting. The gap isn't mainly about intelligence. It's about invisible defaults. Every dollar that hits your bank account meets a decision before you even realize a decision was made. Where does it go first? Does it sit in a checking account waiting to be spent? Does a portion move automatically into savings before you ever see it? That single design choice, automatic versus manual, ends up mattering more than most financial advice you've ever heard. Economist Richard Thaler spent decades studying exactly this. Along with his collaborator, Shlomo Benartzi, he built a program called Save More Tomorrow, designed around a simple observation. People don't lack the desire to save. They lack the structure that makes saving happen without a fight. When Thaler and Benartzi tested a plan that automatically increased a worker's retirement contribution with every future raise, savings rates nearly quadrupled over time. Nothing about the worker's income changed. Only the default changed. The money moved before it could be spent. This is the first fracture point between two people with identical salaries. One has money that flows through their hands and waits to be told what to do. The other has money that is already spoken for the moment it arrives. It's not more discipline, it's less decision-making, which, ironically, produces more control. Here's where it gets more interesting, because the story isn't only about automation, it's about how your brain evaluates money in the first place. Think about how differently $100 feels depending on where it comes from. $100 earned from a paycheck feels heavier, more real, more protected. $100 won unexpectedly. A rebate, a bonus, a bit of found cash feels lighter, easier to spend without a second thought. Psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky name this pattern mental accounting. Your brain doesn't treat all money the same, even though, mathematically, a dollar is a dollar, no matter where it came from. This matters enormously for two people with the same salary, because most extra money doesn't arrive as steady paychecks. It arrives as tax refunds, year-end bonuses, side gigs, unexpected windfalls. One person treats that money as real, folding it into savings or debt payoff as if it were any other dollar they'd worked for. The other treats it as house money, money that barely counts, money that's almost begging to be spent. Over 10 years, that difference in mental accounting can be the entire distance between a paid-off car and a maxed-out credit line. So far, you've seen two invisible forces, automatic structure, mental accounting. But there's a third one, and it might be the most powerful of all because it has almost nothing to do with the money itself and everything to do with what the money is supposed to say about you. In the 1990s, researchers Thomas Stanley and William Danko set out to study America's millionaires. What they found surprised almost everyone, including themselves. Most millionaires didn't look wealthy. They drove modest cars, lived in modest homes, and rarely spent money in ways designed to be seen. Meanwhile, plenty of people with high incomes and visibly expensive lifestyles had almost nothing saved. Stanley and Danko called this the difference between being wealthy and looking wealthy. Two people with identical paychecks can walk completely opposite paths depending on which one they're optimizing for. This is where lifestyle inflation quietly does its damage. A raise arrives. Instead of increasing the gap between income and spending, the spending simply rises to meet it. A bigger apartment, a nicer car payment, dinners that used to feel like an occasion become routine. None of these choices feel reckless in the moment. Each one feels like a reasonable reward for hard work. But stacked year after year, they consume the exact same $50 or $100 or $200 that in someone else's life quietly became an index fund contribution instead. And notice something important here. None of this requires a villain. Nobody is being foolish. Spending money on comfort and enjoyment is not a mistake. The problem isn't the spending itself. It's that spending decisions are being made without the automatic structure from earlier, ever getting a chance to work. Where the first person's raise partially disappeared into savings before it ever hit checking, the second person's raise arrived in full, ready to be absorbed into a slightly bigger life. Now let's put all three pieces together, because this is where the real picture forms. Two paychecks land. Identical amounts. In one bank account, a portion is already gone, moved automatically into retirement or savings, before any decision was even required. In the other, the full amount sits there, waiting. A bonus arrives in both households. In one, it's treated like any other dollar and gets folded into a plan. In the other, it feels like free money, and free money rarely survives contact with a wish list. A raise happens in both careers. In one life, the gap between income and spending quietly widens. In the other, spending rises just enough to match it, and the gap that could have compounded over decades never opens at all. None of this shows up on a resume. None of it shows up in a job title or a salary number. It happens in the space between paydays, in decisions so small they rarely feel like decisions at all. Here's the part that should actually feel encouraging, because the outcome isn't primarily driven by income. It isn't locked in by income either. You don't need a raise to close this gap. You need to change where the decision happens. Automating even a small percentage of every paycheck before you see it removes the daily battle of willpower entirely. Treating windfalls, refunds, and bonuses the same way you treat a hard-earned paycheck closes off one of the most common leaks. And noticing when a raise is quietly being absorbed by a slightly bigger lifestyle gives you the chance to redirect at least part of it before it disappears into rent, dinners, and upgrades you'll barely remember in a year. None of this is about being cheap or self-punishing. Stanley and Danko's research found that many of the highest net worth households in America still enjoyed their lives fully. They simply built a wall, automatic and largely invisible, between money coming in and money being spent, long before the impulse to spend ever got a vote. So think again about those two people with the same salary. It was never really about how much either of them earned. It was about a series of quiet defaults repeated month after month, year after year, until one gap closed and another one opened. Two people, same paycheck, two completely different futures, built one invisible decision at a time.